Heather Thompson Day. I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids podcast today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for doing this. This is so fun. Would you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name is Heather Thompson Day, and I was a teacher for a very long time, teaching grown kids, college kids. And I did that for almost 15 years. And now I write books and do ministry.
Very cool. Now, is it more fun to teach younger or older?
So I've never taught young kids. I substituted for a little bit.
Okay.
And I absolutely loved being a substitute teacher. But then you get to go in and out. You know what I mean? But I love college age kids. It was a massive joy for me to be a part of that transition period for families.
Very cool. I love that. Okay, so I'm excited to talk with you today because you've written a book and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But before we do that, because this is a show for kids, I always ask my guests to tell me a joke or something funny. So do you have something for us today?
Okay, so I hope this lands.
Okay.
I looked this up for this show. Okay.
I love it.
What is a piece of corn's favorite music?
Ooh, I don't know.
Do you really not know?
I really don't.
You can't? Okay, because
I haven't heard this.
I really set this up. All right, this is new for you guys. What is a piece of corn's favorite music? Pop music.
Pop. I love it. You know, because they do have ears, right?
Oh, you set me up. You knew.
No,
you knew where that was going.
I love when I hear new jokes. Sometimes people will say the same joke, but no, that was a good one. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Good job. Well, let's first talk about what it's like being an author, because you've written a children's book. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to go from being a college teacher, professor, to writing a children's book.
Yeah. So I have written many books. So this was, I think, Can I Sit Here was my 8th book that came out. And my publisher had asked me, would you ever think about doing something for kids? And my daughter, London, had just gone through a really difficult bullying experience in her 3rd grade year. And so I knew exactly when they said this to me, I knew exactly what I would do. And I wanted my daughter to join me in doing that. And so we wrote it together.
Cool.
And it's called Can I Sit Here? And it is literally a true story of her experience going up to a group of kids in the cafeteria and with her little lunch tray as a new student and asking, can I sit here? And they all looked at her and got up and left. And so that was kind of the beginning of a downward spiral for her of a really difficult 6-month period.
Wow, that's so difficult. And, you feel like in that moment, like, I'm the only one going through this. But so many kids have been bullied before.
Yeah. And I feel like her writing the story and now the feedback that we've gotten has been very, we don't want to, all of us just love the misery of knowing that this has happened to all of us. But it has been so helpful for her to really realize, oh my goodness, it wasn't just me. Because I do think you think there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my personality. There is something wrong with the way God made me. And this is why nobody seems to get me. And now she realizes that this is part of so many of our experiences, down to adults. I'm sure parents listening.
Oh, yeah.
They have experiences that you literally never forget of being bullied in school.
That's true. And I think, too, adults go through this even as adults. Like, we get bullied online. We might even get bullied at church or at our job. And so lots of people go through this. Tell us about why this was such an important story. Like, what was the purpose of getting this story out?
I think what I wanted was to create moments of self-compassion. It's something that's very central to me because what I did before I've been in ministry was I taught communication. And in communication, we have a field called compassionate communication where you learn compassionate communication strategies. And all that means is like, when life is hard, how am I kind to myself? How do I allow my heart to remain soft despite a situation that is very, very hard? And so this book for me professionally was a way to kind of talk about these compassionate communication strategies. And then as a mom, it was just this redemptive thing that I was able to bring my daughter into so that she realized that she has a voice, right? And that she can share these stories and that it matters and it connects to other people and that you're not alone.
So tell us a little bit about what happened with her. Like when she went through this, is the story in the book exactly like what she went through, or is it a little bit different than her experience?
Yeah, so it's so much worse what she went through.
Oh,
That is a true story that we put in the book, the central theme of her going up to the table, which is parents listening, your kid comes home. We had moved to a new town. We were in Denver. And, your kid comes home and they're like, people don't really like me at school. I'm not making friends. And you're like, You're going to be brave and you're going to make so many friends. And I know how special you are. And you're going to go back there tomorrow and you're going to go up to a group of kids and try to make friends. And so I'm gassing her up at home
yeah.
before she goes to bed, telling her, you're going to get back in there. And so she goes back and she goes up to the group of kids, right? Mom said, I can do this. Mom said, be brave. And then she has this horrible experience, which was not just that. I started documenting just all the times that she was coming home saying, kids were saying her body was made wrong.
Wow.
Kids just making fun of her. Tons of stories of exclusion. And then at the end, and I want to say this for parents, be aware of, this is my own personal humble opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If you yourself as an adult with all of your communication strategies and resources would not stay in a situation in which you are being repeatedly targeted, harassed, or bullied, do not ask an 8-year-old child to stay in a situation with very little resources, right?
True.
Very little help, very little safety or security to just keep going back. And
Yeah.
so I was documenting and talking to her teachers, trying to get some administration involvement. And for me, the last straw, which I wish it hadn't gotten this bad, was I picked her up one day and she got in the backseat of my car and she just starts sobbing. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I look at her and I realize she's bleeding all over her face. She has cuts on her arms. And they had told her, the girls had told her that they were going to play a game at recess where they blindfolded her. And she's just so excited to even be invited to play.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, it's going to make me cry. And this is so many years ago now. And so they blindfolded her and they said, we'll tell you where to go and you have to trust us. And they walked her into a brick wall. And nobody called me from the school. I pick her up. She's bleeding in my back seat. And I'm just like, I am so sorry that I made you keep going back there. And so we switched her school. And can I tell you, little friend who's listening, when we switched her school, in our situation, she didn't have any problems at the new school. It was literally just something that had developed in this dynamic with this classroom and this teacher, that the second we switched her, she had a wonderful rest of her year. And so I wish as a parent, I would have intervened sooner.
Yeah, and I love that you said that kids don't have all the resources that adults do. So as parents, we need to be mindful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Has your daughter expressed, or maybe have you and her discussed ways that maybe she could have handled it differently, or what are some things she would have wished she had responded or done in those situations?
So London she's so smart, but she is, and I don't want her to lose this, she is kind to a fault. She is just a sweet, sweet person. And so, of course, later when you get home, you're like, oh, I should have said, I could have got him with this one. But you know what? I'm proud that she didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud that she just continued to be kind. And she did everything that she was supposed to do. And I think that this is important to say, too.
Mm-hmm.
This is not your fault.
Right.
And this really isn't yours to fix. You are just showing up, and in her situation, repeatedly a pattern of harassment and targeting that she did not ask for or want, and then started to really shrink away from any type of social involvement from, and I went to the teachers. We talked to the administration. Nothing was happening. And so that's when we decided to pull her out. So I do think sometimes there isn't, I mean, of course, what would you say to a kid? Keep being who you are. Know who you are. And that's the conversations I had with her. And to this day, my daughter is now 13. And guess what? She came in my room last night and she said, what are 3 things you like about me? And this is because when she was in 3rd grade, before she would go to bed, I started to say 3 things that I loved about her because I needed her to know that there were so many things to love about who she was because she couldn't see it anymore. And I'll never forget the time I said to her, tell me one thing you like about yourself, because you have to, here's a communication lesson for both parent and child. Your brain is never going to tell you what went right. Your brain is wired in the negative. It's
Hmm.
only going to tell you what goes wrong. It's only going to tell you all the things that should have been different. So you are going to have to consciously make choices. And I do this with my children at night before they go to bed, where you are telling your brain what went right.
Hmm.
What did you like about your day? Where did you see God? What do you like about yourself? And I sat with my daughter, and this is an 8-year-old kid, and she couldn't say anything.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, like my kid, my sweet, bubbly, kind, loves life kid I'm watching her change. And something needs to be done about that.
What would you say to kids that are listening right now that are like, I'm going through this, but I don't feel like I can tell anybody? What would you encourage them to do?
Okay, so here's what I know because I've listened to my daughter say what she did. She tried to talk to a teacher, right? And of course, she talked to her parents.
Hmm.
And so if you can do that, and then something I still have my kids do, just as somebody who worked in the education system for 15 years, documentation is your best friend. And all that means is write down the date and try as hard as you can to have a few sentences as to what happened. And
Hmm.
just keep a little journal documenting this kid did this to me, and I went and talked to my teacher, and she said to go sit down, okay, on whatever date that was.
Yeah.
Show the pattern of behavior and the pattern
Right.
of your attempts to get intervention so that the school administration can see, oh my goodness, this is a kid who has been trying to get help and nobody's listening to them when
Mm.
mom goes in with you. But I hope you can always talk to your mom. My daughter would say she had a wonderful teacher who she actually dedicated the book to, named Mrs. Horton, who actually, this is when we had switched her and she went to a new school, but that became like her person. If anything ever happened at the new school again, she gave her markers. My daughter learned that she loved to draw. She learned that she likes to write, all because of the time that this one teacher that she spent time with saying, hey, here's what I'm feeling like today. That teacher saw her. And so teachers, man, they make such a big difference.
Wow, they really do. And how they handle things and how
Yeah.
they see the children, that's so important. Let's think about this on the other side though,
Okay.
because I feel like I'm a goofy person and I like to joke around. And in my family, we like to make fun of each other and say things. But what if you're a kid or an adult and you're realizing maybe something that I did that I thought was funny
Mm,
is actually bullying? How do we decide or how do we figure out if we're being the aggressor, we're being the bully?
that is such a good question. Man, how do you know if you are being the bully? I hope that somebody points it out to you and that you're receptive to it. What I would say is, and this is on the other end, um, if you can't tell if somebody's joking, it's okay to say to them, and this is the exact words I teach my kids to use,
Hmm.
it makes me uncomfortable when you do that.
Mm.
It makes me uncomfortable when you make that joke. My son is very, very short, and he has a teacher who said in front of the whole class, "Oh, Hudson, when you go to a restaurant, do you use a booster seat?"
Hmm.
And so I really think she was making a joke, right? She thought it was like we're bantering here, middle school boys, but he was really hurt, right? And he came home and I said, so what you need to say to her tomorrow is, if she does it again, it makes me uncomfortable when you talk about my height.
Hmm.
Any teacher who is worth their salt in teaching will say, oh my goodness, that was not my intention. I am so sorry that I said that.
Right.
Right. And now I realize, okay, this is now a safe space again.
Yeah, that's good. And that reminds me too, I remember when I was probably in like 5th or 6th grade, and I remember I was in a car with a big group of girls and we were all joking and we're saying something and I made a joke that was inappropriate, but I didn't realize it. Maybe I'd
Yeah.
heard it or said something, and the entire car erupts in laughter and everybody's laughing, and we get out of the car and one of the girls pulls me aside and said, "That was not funny. I didn't like that."
Wow. What a
I
kid.
know. And you know what? I immediately went, "I am so sorry."
Yeah.
And that should be our response. When someone
Yes.
says, "Hey, that was not funny," or that made me uncomfortable. Our response should be, "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that." Not, "Oh, get over it. You're fine. You're
Yes.
making a big deal about it." Because even if they are, like even if it wasn't meant to hurt them and they took it as that, you listening to them and hearing and being compassionate, I think is so important. So I'm glad you said that. I think that is really important
Yeah.
because there are people out there that they're like, "I'm just funny. I'm just making jokes." and they don't realize how far those jokes can go sometimes.
Yeah, in communication, we say communication is in the person. So you really can't treat every single person the same way because there might be somebody where truly you're not targeting them,
Mhm.
right? You think it's silly. You think we're all, actually, I know people who love to be made fun of.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
attention, anytime, any way, I'll take it,
Yeah.
So you just have to learn different people's personalities and
Right.
be respectful of that person and their desires.
Right. I love that. Another thing that I love you said was about documenting. And I went through a season where I was working with someone in a job, and I noticed that I just didn't feel comfortable around this person.
Mm,
And so I just started writing down, like, okay, why is it that I feel this way? And I started writing down incidents. And when I finally stepped back and looked at the list, the very long list of things and issues that had been going on, it made me realize, like, this
yes.
isn't just because I'm being dramatic or I'm being sensitive. There's a lot here. And so I was
Yes.
able to address it because even the documentation for me to look at
Mm-hmm.
helps me and my family to see there's an issue. So even if it's just for you, for your personal to recognize it and to write it down, I think that's really smart.
This is such a big thing, I think, for kids is to learn trusting themselves and
Mhm.
trusting their guts, trusting their, because that is not something I felt like my parents really taught me how to trust them.
Mm,
It took me many years to learn how to trust me. And we need both of those things. Else
right.
we end up in situations where we minimize a situation that's actually dangerous to us. This
Right.
is threatening. This person actually is not my friend, though they are using the word friend,
Right.
right? So, yeah, paying attention to how somebody is making you feel, writing it down, those things are so important.
And so this book, you said it's about feeling lonely,
It's so
being brave,
cute.
and making friends. So what would you give advice to someone who is struggling to make friends?
It is getting harder and harder, it seems like.
Mm,
Even my young kids are struggling socially in way I think because of technology, we're
yeah.
struggling to make connections that but human beings are actually wired to experience connection. So I would say one of the ways that we make friends is to look for in communication we say looking for shared common experiences. So I always say to my son Sawyer, who just went to a new school, that he got to be able to go to the gifted and talented program, but it took him to a very new school. So he was very afraid, and he doesn't like soccer. None of my kids, besides like they like track, but none of them like sports outside of running.
Okay.
And so my son Sawyer is like, everybody at recess, I don't have any friends. And at recess, they're all playing basketball or soccer. And I'm like, okay, but we're going to have to make some shared common experiences. So is it possible for you to go play soccer? I don't like soccer. Well, if you're feeling lonely,
Hmm.
maybe we try something we don't like to build a relationship with the people who do like soccer. And then another recess, you can say, hey, can we try something else? Because I don't really like soccer. You know what I mean? You have
Hmm.
to be willing to step into other people's world. And
Yeah.
so looking for shared experiences, if everybody's playing tag, can you build up the confidence and the courage to say, hey, can I play? Most of
Yeah.
the time, especially if there's a group playing, I would say most of the time, the more the merrier.
Yeah. I think it's really just like you said, finding that commonality or finding something about another person that you like see the good in them, even if it's just something
Yeah.
they're wearing. Like I always notice people's shoes. So I always like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
like your shoes." And so kids can do that. You can walk up to any adults can do that too. You can walk up to anyone and say, "Oh, I love your shoes. Where'd you get them?" Or,
Yes.
like something so easy where it doesn't have to be an exchange fully, just reaching out and like you said, finding that commonality, I think is really good.
Yeah, saying hi.
Yeah.
Start there,
Right.
anything that we do to reduce in our brains the discomfort of like, oh, I don't know this person. Anything that we can do, and I'm telling you, just smiling at people reduces discomfort. It's
Mhm.
actually much easier than we think. I will say, though, I want to be honest. I do think it is, I don't know how old you are, Kristen, but for me, I was born in 87. And I don't feel like it was as hard to make friends as I'm seeing my kids and my nephews their struggles. So I do think something has changed in the
Mhm.
climate and where maybe people just aren't as needy of it because they know that they can go home and just get on their phone or something.
Right.
And so they are like, okay to be alone at school for 8 hours because I'm going to go home and just get on my phone anyway and numb out doing that. So
Yeah.
this is really hard. I just want to say that.
Yeah,
I
it
don't think
is.
it's the same as mom and dad experienced. I think they're in a very new experience that we have never as a human species dealt with before. And so we're going to learn a lot from them just listening.
Absolutely. I also think that we have to, as parents, like we have to keep encouraging them
Yes.
to reach out, even if it's
Yes.
hard. And
Yes.
one of the most comforting things that someone said to me years ago, probably when I was in high school or middle school, was no one thinks about you as much as you
Yes.
think about you. And so to remember that, because we get anxiety, like I said the wrong thing or I did something awkward, no one's thinking about it. They might have seen it in the moment, they might have laughed. They might have, but no one's thinking about it the next day. So
No.
if we could just remember that we're thinking way more about the things that we're doing more than the other kids do. I think that's helpful.
There's this thing called the spotlight effect.
Hmm.
We go through life thinking that there is this big spotlight on us
Right.
and that everybody is watching and noticing. But mainly people are just watching and noticing themselves.
Right. Right. And everybody wants to fit in and
Yeah.
everybody wants to. So I always tell my kids, I have both of my kids, they're very different personalities, but they're both very good at making friends.
Oh,
And so
good.
I encourage them to keep that up by making new friends and finding those people who don't have a
Yes.
buddy or don't have somebody or they're not good at maybe those shy people. If you're not shy, find a shy person and be friends with them because they need that encouragement.
Yes, that's so important. If you are the parent of a kid who is naturally more, they're like a connector in life, right?
Yes.
Like they bring people in. We're playing this game. Everybody come over. Tell them to pay attention to the kid who is not that way and maybe feeling left out. They can make a big difference in somebody's day.
So tell us about where we can find this book, because I
Oh,
think this is such an important conversation. I think parents need to have resources like this because if your kid hasn't experienced this yet, they probably will. And so we want to make sure we have those resources in our home to talk about it. Where can our listeners get your book?
yeah. You can just go to heatherthompsonday.com. Everything's listed on my website or, anywhere books are sold. It's called Can I Sit Here? You can get it on Amazon, Target, anywhere. But something that we tried to do in the book was to help kids have language to process what they're feeling.
Mm,
So it will literally say, London felt lonely. Lonely feels like
mm,
being in a group of kids who are laughing and not knowing the joke. Lonely feels like not having a place to sit, right? So I'm trying to give kids language to be able to express, oh my goodness, mom, that's what I feel when I'm at school.
mhm.
I feel lonely. So I think we do it very, very well. It's a beautiful, sweet little book that actually adults have enjoyed too, which is just so cute.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because like I said, it's not just kids that go
Yeah,
through
right?
bullying. So if we can learn at a young age how to handle this and how to move through life when we experience this, I think that'll make us all the better. So I'm so glad you've written this. So thank you for doing that. Well, this has been so great, Heather. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for coming on here today. Before I let you go, I always ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So, do you have a memory from your childhood do you want to share with us?
I remember the very first race. It was a race put on by my local grocery store.
Okay.
And I was so excited. And I was like, I am absolutely going to win. I am so fast. And I was so excited. And I got to the starting line and they, whatever the little gun thing is or a whistle that blew, it blared. And I tripped.
Oh,
Like
no.
literally at the beginning of the race. Right at the starting line, tripped over my own feet. And so I lost the race. And that is just a big memory for me. I don't really have a bow to put on that, just that I lost the first race I ever ran. And I was so excited to show up. And sometimes life goes like that. You're so excited to try something new and then you trip and things just don't go the way you thought. And how do we keep showing back up for ourselves and signing up for the next race so that we have a new experience? That's the invitation for all of us.
That's so good. Yeah, keep signing up even if you trip. And you know
Yeah.
what? No one thought about that
Nobody
more
else.
than you did.
And look at me, right? 20, 30 years later, still like, do you remember the day? I'll never forget.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Heather, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was great.
Thanks for having me.